Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing?
Good.
Very pleased to be here. As Maggie mentioned, my name is Cullah. I'm the Stand With Crypto president of the Wisconsin chapter. And very pleased to be moderating such a panel here on this historic day. Here we have two senators from our state legislature. We have Senator Dora Drake, Senator Patrick Testin. We also have two champions of our private industry. We have Ashley Gunn, Coinbase, as well as Christopher Perceptions, the 21Society. And today is a historic day for all of us that have been working diligently and dedicated to the world of digital policy. And so I'd like to get started right away with the senators. Maybe we can just go down the line. Maybe if you guys don't mind telling a little bit to our audience about blockchain, crypto, why? What has brought you to that? And maybe a little bit context for the folks here who might not know as much about you and why you do.
Sounds good. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in front of you all today. My name is Dora Drake. I have the pleasure of serving the 4th Senate District in Wisconsin, which is the north portion part of the city of Milwaukee, as well as parts of Wauwatosa, Brown Deer, and all of Glendale and Shorewood. Now, born and raised in the district that I represent, I come from a background actually for social work, but in that we've always tried to find the gaps of where people are being served. And so actually several years back when I was a state representative, I was very interested in this new industry of crypto and still honestly learning much about it. But what I do believe and why I'm very interested in pushing out the WIN bill is focused on ensuring that people actually are educated on what it is. So if I'm, as a legislator, still am learning about what this industry is, how much more are constituents that may be interested in whether they want to understand how they can invest in cryptocurrency, or even if you're a business owner here. I've heard so many stories of individuals who want to keep business here, and they're Wisconsinites, and they had to leave. And one thing that I think Senator Testin can speak to is we want to keep our talent here. We know that we have amazing folks that have amazing ideas and innovative solutions, but we got to find ways where we keep them here and obviously still protect our constituents. And so that's why I'm excited to be in front of you all today and why I'm very interested in this larger conversation of pushing legislation around digital currency in general.
Well, thank you, Senator. I'm Patrick Testin, represent the 24th Senate District, which is up in the central Wisconsin area, so Stevens Point, Wisconsin Rapids, Mauston, Black River Falls, so a good portion of central and western Wisconsin. And so I serve as the chair of the Agriculture and Revenue Committee in the state Senate, and also serve as the co-vice chair of the Joint Finance Committee. And way of background, before I was in the legislature, I worked in sales for a wine distribution company, so for those of you drinking wine, thank you. But now do this full time. And one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is exactly why I love the job that I do, because when it comes to issues like cryptocurrency, I am at the shallow end of the pool as far as knowledge, but it certainly fascinates me on the opportunities and the applications that we can have if we have a vibrant and thriving framework here in the state. And what's really unique about this, I mean, I think this is a testament that this is a prime example of how innovative the private sector can be, and then as regulators, government moves pretty slow. And I think is safely said at the federal level as well as the state level. So oftentimes as policymakers, we're oftentimes behind the 8 ball in trying to keep up with the innovations. But here we have an opportunity, as Senator Drake outlined, where we have this thriving new currency and different types of currencies on the digital front that could provide different pathways for new investment, new opportunities, new growth here in the state. And I share the exact same sentiment with Senator Drake, is that when we take a look at the future of our state, we do have some challenges as it relates to aging demographics, doing what we can to be more competitive, what can we do to attract new opportunities in the state. And so I think the more that we can be on the forefront of these issues, it's going to make Wisconsin more attractive for these new industries to come in, set up shop, take root, and grow, which I think in the long run is going to be the benefit for every corner of the state.
Great, thank you. Ashley Gunn, Coinbase. I have our pleasure of leading our state policy work at Coinbase. And I really enjoy that because I get to go across the country and meet all of people like you here in this room. And, I've gotten to know both Maggie and Cullah over the last month or so, and Chris here. And the thing that's great about this is Wisconsin has such a vibrant crypto community, and to be able to come and talk about that and educate that and sort of prop up those business owners, not only is it just really rewarding for me, but it's great for the state of Wisconsin. It represents jobs, as you were saying. It represents revenue. It represents economic development, and creating legislation like Senator Drake is working on that sort of allows for that to continue to innovate here and allows for that to continue to grow only has long-term impacts for Wisconsin and really put y'all at the forefront of this technology, and I think that will pay dividends. If you aren't aware, 15% of Wisconsinites own crypto. So it's not a small part of the population, and it is only continuing to grow as this becomes more and more prevalent in the mainstream technology. So really excited to be here tonight and just sort of talk about what this technology shows.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Perceptions. Yes, that's my legal name. Very long story, but don't have enough time for that. I am a Wisconsinite born and raised here, and a little bit of a digital nomad. I've lived abroad in places like South Africa, lived in LA, but there's no place like Wisconsin. Some of the most brilliant minds I've ever come across have spawned from this state. And looking at industries such as artificial intelligence, as well as Web3 outputs such as Bitcoin, these are going to mint the next millionaires, billionaires, and potentially even trillionaires. I would love for Wisconsin to have a piece of that future. And I think legislative outputs such as the Wind Bill are going to be deeply instrumental in bringing about this, not just for states that are holding Bitcoin. For people who don't know, Wisconsin actually holds Bitcoin in their pension system, to the tune of hundreds of millions. So if it's good enough for the pension, surely it's good enough for tech hubs like the Milwaukee Milky Way Tech Hub. Surely it's good enough for private business citizens. Surely it's good enough for people that want to learn about this. And I've devoted 10 years of my life to this industry, best-selling author. I educate thousands of people around the world concerning this. And I'm deeply passionate about not just going to Miami or Wyoming, but I want to do things in my home state. So that's why I'm excited about being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Senator Drake, we'll hear from you right away. So a lot of why we're here, why this is historic, is this Wind Bill. And folks here might have learned a little bit about it from some of the information that we sent about this event, or folks that are involved in the space more that have heard about it right away from some of the previous versions of the bill that have been online. But can you explain to people what is the Wind Bill, what does it stand for, and will it make Wisconsin win?
Sure thing. So the Wind Bill essentially is to ensure that every Wisconsinite has the opportunity to win. And so there's two components in the bill. One, earlier we talked about the need for education, and that's what that first part of the bill does. It's a pilot program where, again, because this is nuanced and government tends to move slow, it gives us a chance to see what is the real interest in it, right, as legislators. So there's funding attached to it where it educates the public about what cryptocurrency is. It also provides support for our business owners and entrepreneurs to understand how they can use cryptocurrency to sell and purchase goods. The other portion of that is to allow a regulatory framework, so to speak, to ensure that any entrepreneur that is interested in building a business, in this industry, does in the framework where we protect consumers, but we also give them that support to figure out how they can do it. And that's, I think, especially important is because, we know that not all entrepreneurs have the same access to capital, to support. And again, if we want to keep talent here, I want to make sure that we're sending a clear message from Wisconsin to our business owners and just innovators that we welcome innovation here. And there's a larger conversation about just cryptocurrency in general on a global scale. I would hate for Wisconsin to miss out on that opportunity. We have the Great Lakes right next to us. We have an amazing agriculture industry. And of course, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. Just saying. So why not make Wisconsin the best place for everybody? Business owners, our everyday constituents, and globally, so we have an impact on what's happening not just nationally, but globally. And that's what the Wind Bill does.
Senator Testin, you're on the other side of the aisle as to Senator Drake here. How do you see, in Madison, how do you see this issue as a nonpartisan issue, or how do you see just the overall feeling in Madison about crypto, blockchain, digital innovation like this? Can you just tell us a little bit about thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of openness to it, but I think with like any burgeoning new industry, there needs to be education. I'm sure if you probably walk the halls in Madison right now, I would probably say the vast majority of members in our caucus specifically, and probably even in the assembly on the Republican side, probably aren't as familiar with cryptocurrency. And again, I do not profess to be an expert on this front whatsoever, but I'm fascinated by it, which is why I'm so intrigued by Senator Drake's proposal, the Win bill. But that probably cuts both ways too. I'm sure there are probably members on the Democrat side in both respective houses that aren't as familiar with it either. So this is really an opportunity for those of you who are far more knowledgeable than the two of us up here to be in contact with your lawmakers, because right now, especially in this particular session, we have seen tremendous turnover in the legislature. We have roughly just shy of 40 new members in both houses. But again, this is about promoting a new industry and how that can help grow the state. I mean, I think about just in the room that we're in, the history of the city of Milwaukee, how it went from a brewing town to a manufacturing hub. And now with all the investments in data centers in places like Southeast Wisconsin and Microsoft, and even up in my neck of the woods, we just got a $200 million announcement of a data center going in Wisconsin Rapids. It's industries like these where, again, we need to be open-minded, be on the forefront, have the guardrails put in place for basic consumer protections, but also not have them so restrictive that it strangles this industry right in the crib. We want to be able to grow this responsibly and allow these entrepreneurs to really take hold and run with it. And as a result of that, I think Wisconsin's going to be really well positioned compared to some of our neighbors here in the Midwest to do the most good and have the most impact, because I'm a firm believer we have got the best story to sell, not just here in the Midwest, but countrywide. But we just need to have that ecosystem in place at the state level to ensure that this industry can continue to grow.
Ashley, with your work at Coinbase, Coinbase is almost a term that's associated one-for-one with crypto or blockchain. When people think of Coinbase, or think of crypto, they think of Coinbase. And you are leading the effort at a state level across the country. In what is it that you see across the country, and how are other states, how do they work? How does Wisconsin working? How do you see this? How do you see all that? How do you see the overall landscape?
Yeah, thank you. What I'm often reminded of at Coinbase is our mission statement is to promote economic freedom throughout the world. And everything we're doing is to get to that mission. Crypto represents financial freedom. It represents all walks of life. I mean, even just looking around this room, we have people from all different backgrounds, I imagine. And there is no one type of box for what crypto represents. And that's something that I sort of take a lot of pride in, and something that I really enjoy when I go around to all these states and work in different state policy issues. I think in the last 6 months or 6 months to a year, we've seen a lot more interest in crypto, which is really exciting, and we're seeing a lot of positive momentum. But I think there's different ways that people are thinking about. A lot of states have sort of taken up what they're calling the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Bill, which is where certain states can invest in different crypto. We're also seeing that at the federal level. We're seeing a lot of activity at the federal level, and I'll maybe come back to that in a little bit. But then other things that we're seeing at the states is, again, it goes back to what Senator Testin was talking about, education. A lot of this is about education right now, and a lot of states are taking up different blockchain working group bills or ways to just study the blockchain, because it does create efficiencies. There are ways to put your records on the blockchain. There are ways to use blockchain for supply chain. There's all these opportunities that have really been untapped beyond just the financial use case. And I think the states that are really looking into that and also creating, again, back to the Win bill, creating opportunities for different innovation to thrive here without potential harm or backlash, are creating those opportunities that are going to really make blockchain move to the next level of adoption and really show that we're here to stay.
Christopher, can you tell people a little bit more about your business, kind of how it's led you to your role in the drafting of the WIN bill and advising of the WIN bill? Can you tell a little bit to the audience about why it's so important to you and what brought you there? Can you share us a little bit about your journey there?
Sure. So this is going to take a really sharp turn. So give you a little bit of my background. My mother is a Christian evangelist. She's retired now. My dad, who was in and out of my life, he actually was a drug dealer. Highly abusive, all of the stereotypical things. So I'm in between this crossroads my entire life. And I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, I am born into a system, ultimately. And my place in this system is kind of hinging on my parental guides because I didn't have that choice as an embryo. But growing up, I developed this sense of duty of my life. I need to make sure that my life matters and counts for something beyond just accumulating of things. And fast forward, roughly 10 years ago, I found out about this weird magic internet money thing called Bitcoin, and I read the white paper, and it completely changed my life because it showed me a possibility for something that is democratized and fair and globally scalable. So after doing this research concerning Bitcoin, I discovered three things. We need mass adoption, but it only can work if people understand it, because no one's going to invest in something they don't understand. Two, we need to make it easy for the next wave of jobs or economic output to come where people can build on this technology easily. And then three, we need to ensure that legislators have the ability to have input and create frameworks to incentivize this innovation. So after authoring 5 books, speaking at conferences and things of that nature, I'm on fire regarding passion for this industry because I know how important it is. And globally speaking, here's a quick statistic, roughly 4% of the world uses Bitcoin, and it is at a $2 trillion market cap. What would that look like within the next 5 years if we're able to go from 4 to perhaps 10%? And I'll wet your noodle even more. What would happen if Wisconsin was able to capture just 1% of that value? How many jobs would that mean? How would that impact how banks do businesses, how tech hubs can onboard people, how accelerators can move? So the potential not only excites me, but coming from where I came from and by the grace of God being able to survive, I for sure know that this is an out for everyone, where everyone truly can win.
What's up? Senator Drake, go back to you again. What has the process of the WIN bill been like for you, and what feedback have you been getting so far? And can you share a little bit about how that process works, and maybe the folks here that don't know, maybe how would it even get passed? How does this even work?
Yeah, so you're smiling. Well, just like any policy, it takes time and it takes work because there's a lot of different partners and stakeholders that, have a say in how it might impact them. So obviously there's an idea that, sometimes we would draft, a draft legislation, and then we reach out to different partners. So one partner is our Department of Financial Institutions. So wanted to make sure we had some conversations on what those concerns might be. Some of those have been the issue of, consumer protections, right? And I think it's talking about a larger conversation that we're just hearing nationally about what are securities, how do we still protect consumers, but very much so still supporting innovation. So those have been some of the big concerns, really. Some of the other things is just like, what is it? And that's to what Senator Testin shared. There is a lot of education that's needed in this. And one thing that was shared actually during a local event that I had actually in February with some folks in the district that were interested in hearing about it, shared their own personal stories, how they were very interested in the business, but got burned, like losing thousands, and not just 1,000, 10, 20 thousands of funds, right? And so understanding what their concerns are, it also gave us feedback on making sure that anyone that would be interested in any type of program or applicant, they'd have to be vetted. So like you can't have a background if you have a history of money laundering or anything of that. I don't even think that in our state statutes we have criminal codes for people that are causing harm in this digital space. And so that, well, yeah, not yet. You may want to speak to that a little bit, but those are that's some of the feedback that we've gotten. So obviously with that, not every bill is going to have everyone at 100%, but it's figuring out to what people can be okay to. And so once you release it, then it really goes through the legislative process. It has to get a public hearing. There has to be, people to bring it up for a vote. And then that's where the sausage making happens, to see how it can pass the Assembly, the Senate, and then obviously get to the governor's desk. But that's essentially what would happen in not just introducing legislation pertaining to this, but any piece of legislation as well.
Actually, we'll go to you next. If you don't mind, just maybe share a little bit more to the folks here who might be curious as to, are there other states, well, you mentioned strategic reserve, are there other states that have similar types of legislation, or is there something that analogous to this that you've seen or that you know about, or if you don't mind just shedding some light on that?
So I think the WIN legislation is somewhat unique, and I think that's credited to Senator Drake and Chris's creative thinking around this bill. I think there have been other versions of regulatory sandbox bills that have sort of come through different states, and we've seen that in different places. I know Hawaii, for example, was one a few years ago. You often talk about Wyoming, and I would love to hear your thoughts on Wyoming, because they've created specific DAO legislation that allows businesses to be able to register there and feel a little more comfortable with, there not being backlash. But overall, I think this is still a very, very nascent industry, and there's still a lot of opportunity. And again, this is why I think it's so important that Wisconsin is taking a stance on this right now, because you are on the forefront and you do have the ability right now to be one of the first states to take a technological, move the ball forward technologically. And I think that's really great. Great for the state and great for the people in this room. I mean, look how many people are here right now. I mean, this is a huge turnout. I think it shows how important crypto is to the community. But maybe, Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about sort of how, you mentioned Wyoming and you mentioned Miami, and sort of like why those were states and areas that were just a different regulatory regime than Wisconsin.
Sure. Thanks for that. And I'll keep my comments brief. But concerning Wyoming, they were very open to this technology as it was starting to really take precedent globally. They wanted America to make sure it had its stake. So they allowed for decentralized autonomous organizations, or short DAO, to be able to form. So think of them as social clubs on blockchains in one way. Then you have Hawaii, as you mentioned, concerning regulatory sandboxes, allowing for companies to ideate new, unique, novel products and services for a short time horizon, making sure that bad actors don't get in, making sure that there were certain guardrails and limits. Same thing as it relates to Arizona, which was very instrumental in Senator Drake and myself as we were looking at how we can make this WIN bill really shine through. But to your point, Miami kind of was crypto capital at one point, but there was never a framework like what the WIN bill currently offers, which allows for everyone to literally take part. So to your point, it is truly unique in that regard.
Senator Testin, when you're in Madison or even in your local constituency, do you hear anything about crypto or blockchain? Or because earlier this year, I remember thinking about, okay, what's the goals that we want to do for the community and our advocacy in Wisconsin? And this was before I knew that you guys were even cooking this up. And I remember being like, we're going to have a task force. This is just in my own internal, we're going to have a task force to look at it, and maybe something, we'll have someone say the words in Madison. And that was in my mind, I was like, that's the step. Obviously, we've leapfrogged my expectations. But have you ever heard people say those words, blockchain, crypto?
I have, and long before Senator Drake put on my desk the WIN legislation proposal that she's authored, it was more so on the other side of the coin, no pun intended here, but dealing with some of the bad actors who operate in this space. And so I got approached by a couple of my sheriffs up in my neck of the woods in Wood and Portage County, where the crypto kiosks have been used as tools to defraud individuals out of thousands of dollars. A lot of our detectives up there had noticed that a lot of drug dealers weren't using cash anymore. They were using these devices as a way to basically pass through money. And so we've been working on legislation and working with some folks who operate in the cryptocurrency world, along with our Department of Justice, to, again, not outright ban these kiosks, because I do think they are a valuable tool when used correctly and in the right way by good actors, but doing what we can, and just as in with any case, there are going to be individuals who are going to see this new technology as a way to do really bad things. And I think that's where we as lawmakers and policymakers need to work with the stakeholders on these industries is, okay, how do we get them out of that? And so we're working on a bill right now and having very productive conversations with law enforcement as well as those who operate these kiosks to find a good middle ground that, again, doesn't box people out of accessing cryptocurrencies, because, again, we want to foster growth in this industry, but making sure that anyone who's going to take advantage of the most vulnerable within our population, that we're getting those guys off the street. And so, you know, that's one of the challenges that we have, too, is that with anything that's new, I mean, it's been my experience in my tenure in the state Senate that government, by its very nature, is resistant to change, but our state model's forward. And with proposals like the wind legislation, we've got great opportunities here to push this industry forward here in the state for not just the years to come, but for the decades that come in the future. Yeah, that's you.
So, Ashley, if you don't mind, from your perspective, consumer protection has been a point of conversation here. How do you see the role of state legislatures or state agencies and all that stuff in your experience for the consumer protection, and how does that relate to the work that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, consumer protection is at the forefront for Coinbase. I mean, it is something we take absolutely very seriously. If those in the room don't know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are federally regulated. We are a public company, so we have a different set of SEC standards that we have to apply to because we are a public company. We have a money services business under Treasury. And then additionally, I think this gets to the states, we have money transmission licenses in all the states that require them. So most of the 50 states do require that. And that basically means we have a license with the banking regulator, and that's typically the banking regulator in that state, to be able to send payments, which is at the core of Coinbase's business. And we're very proud to have that, because I do think that that does provide a level of regulatory certainty out there that is really important for the community and is really important for the consumers. I think, Senator Testin was explaining, like, there are bad actors out there, and we do need to acknowledge that. And there are bad actors in many, many industries, and we need to figure out a way that protects consumers while still having a fit-for-purpose regulatory regime that allows for innovation. And I think, creating opportunities like the bills that y'all are considering are finding that balance to ensure that consumers can operate in this space, without harm, without fraud. And I think the more guardrails that are in place and the more people are talking about it and the more people are educating, the better the community is going to be and the safer the consumers are going to be. And then that gets back to your comments that more and more people are going to adopt it, and there's going to be more potential out there.
Awesome. Chris, the other point of this, you mentioned it, education. If you don't mind, what is your experience about educating people? This is something that, as pioneers in this industry, kind of ahead of mass adoption curves, with all the complexities of mathematics and computer science, economics, material science, so many different things are all baked into this new type of technology. So how do you approach education, and how do you see education being moving forward in Wisconsin?
So for one, the fact that Wisconsin is known for a lot of things, it's also known for its great educational institutions. So Wisconsin, by and large, values education. So if you speak education, you kind of have ears perk up. But once you get their attention, then what? Because now we have to demystify certain languages like smart contract, auditing, proof of stake, proof of work. People are like, are you sneezing? Like, what are you saying? So being able to break this down is very, very important. Jargon exists no matter what industry a person is in. I don't know how to speak to my cousin who is a contractor because he's talking about Tyvek and all these other different things. So I'm not sure what he's saying. But once he breaks it down in layman's terms, it's like, okay, I kind of understand. It's the stuff that protects it, that keeps the walls from getting wet. That's easily understood. So being able to do that in places like London, in places like Miami, et cetera, it's really taught me how to have this Swiss Army knife of language, of ultimately breaking down what it is. And it all starts with value proposition. So if I'm an investor and I'm listening to a pitch, I need to know first, what is this problem that you're solving? Most people are like, well, my bank account works just fine. I look at that as a stove. I look at something like digital assets potentially as a oven that is a little bit more mobile and allows for you to cook whenever you want, as opposed to having open hours and close hours. It gives you sovereignty. So the pain point of, oh, well, if this bank is down for maintenance, I'm not able to see my value. I just have to trust that this institution is fine, and that works for some. But in this hyper-digital world, people are becoming more focused on identity, like can I make sure that my identity is safeguarded, as well as value. So once you reach people concerning the pain point, it gets easier to build the building blocks of language, saying this is what this means, this is what this means. And then the last step is getting people to actually try it. Have you downloaded a wallet? Have you tried Coinbase? Have you looked at all of the options that exist? And once they try it, it's like, wait a minute, this is not as hard as I thought. Let me dig a little bit deeper. Let me do my own research. Let me make sure that this can work for me and my family. I don't have to mortgage my house to get into Bitcoin. I can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin and get things rolling. Okay, this is interesting. And then you see the eureka moments, and that's what I love.
Amazing. So we'll go down the line again, starting with Senator Drake, and just kind of have the last question here for everybody before we move on to our founder showcase. Just an idea. Feel free to take it if you want. I'd love for you, each one of you, to have some last remarks, or maybe some remarks that people can take home from this event. Maybe it's an actionable item, or maybe it's just a thought to simmer in your mind. The idea of financial freedom was something that stuck in my head when you mentioned that. It's definitely something that has drawn me towards this area too. But I'd love to hear you guys' closing remarks on for this audience.
Well, one is, I absolutely love this discussion, but I think I really want to hone in the fact that this is an issue that really should be bipartisan. You know, it's a growing industry that's new, it's interesting, and it's here to stay. You know, and so we can either put our head in the sand and ignore that it's here, or we can figure out how we can get to a solution. And I really do think that this is an issue that we shouldn't be scared to look into. If anything, if we have the courage to move forward, I think we would see amazing change, not just in the people that we get to represent, but really how we can grow Wisconsin where everyone wins.
Well, again, thank you for this opportunity, and to echo Senator Drake's comments, I mean, we really have a tremendous opportunity here to position Wisconsin, and this is one that I don't see as going to be a Democrat or Republican issue. This should be a bipartisan issue, and you know, we'll have plenty of opportunities for disagreement over the next couple months as we work through the state budget, but I'm really, this is where I'm so intrigued with the prospect of setting Wisconsin up to be a leader in cryptocurrency. Is, you know, you take a look at all the investments that are being made in data centers and AI and all those conversations, and consumers are looking for new technologies to improve their lives. This is another piece of that puzzle. And so if this is something that you want to see get across the finish line, the time to strike the iron is right now, contacting your state officials in both the Senate and the Assembly and making the case. And let me tell you, you are going to come across legislators who, when you start talking cryptocurrency, you might be talking a completely different language that's foreign to them. But that's okay. if they're not with you right out of the gate, because just like me, I'm still at the starting block of learning more and more about crypto. So just continue to educate and advocate for this position, and that's what's going to move the needle, get lawmakers more comfortable. The more people that we have coming to the table, that gives us more collective buying power when we're working with our colleagues through the committee process, trying to get a bill through each house onto the governor's desk and hopefully signed into law, and we can have an innovative the WIN Act signed into law and really position Wisconsin to be a leader like we should be on this front.
Yeah, I echo all those comments, and again, I thank the senators for taking their leadership on this legislation and sort of putting Wisconsin at the forefront of this technology. But I guess my one take that I have is, Coinbase has done a variety of these different events throughout the country, and we've partnered with Stand with Crypto a variety of times. And every time I come to all these events, I'm always reminded how many people show up in this room and sort of the variety of profiles of people that show up. Again, there is no one box fits all for crypto, and it really just shows the power of the technology and the power of sort of embracing your own financial freedom. And I think, Senator Testin, you were getting to this a little bit. All of you sort of represent your own level of advocacy in your own way, and if crypto is something that you're really passionate about and you want to see more movement, reach out to your state legislatures, reach out to your federal legislators, let them know that this is something that you care about and it is a bipartisan issue and there is policy movements that are happening, and talk to them about it. And if you have any questions about any of that or sort of how to get involved, please come see me because I'm happy to talk to you about that.
All right, Wisconsin. This is the time to actually mobilize. Don't just listen to these words from these amazing people. Don't just read the bills that the senators are introducing. Actually activate, because they're only one part of the puzzle. Coinbase is one part of the puzzle. I'm one part of the puzzle, but we need you all, ultimately. So the phone that you have burning a hole in your pocket, definitely use that. Use the hashtag. Share this with your friends. Make sure that you actually do reach out to your representatives and let them know this might be above you concerning language, but we can break this down so that you understand it and also understand that the window of time is now, because it is getting shorter and shorter. There are so many states in the Midwest, and I want Wisconsin to be the hub of the Midwest. If I look west, people could say Wyoming, California. People could say Florida concerning the South. People could say New York or DC concerning the East. Midwest, question mark. This is our time. So I want you all to just activate. That's my parting word, activate.
If I could say one thing, I just want to acknowledge the electeds that are in the room. And so we do have Representative Haywood here. We also have Alderman Mark Chambers in the back. And then I note that there is a representative from U.S. Senator Johnson. Is he still here? Oh, and Congressman Style. And Fitzgerald. Okay, a lot of folks here.
Everybody's in the house.
All right, well, I just wanted to make sure that we gave our due diligence for the people that were in the room.
All right, with that, everyone give a nice, big, warm round of applause for our panel here. Thank you so much.